Hello and welcome to Frankly Speaking. Mr. Hardeep Puri, as always, pleasure to have you on the show. And this time, can we agree to do a tough show?
I thought every show with you is tough. But if
you want to do it tougher and tougher still, be my guest.
Mr. Hardeep Puri, we've had a successful G20 summit and we spoke just right after the declaration happened. But today, there is another high-profile meeting that you and the Prime Minister have been engaged in with the Saudi Prince. And we're looking at this meeting in more ways than one. Of course, the fuel requirements, the energy security that we've been talking about. Tell our viewers what has been the discussion with the Saudi Prince and how does India stand to gain from it?
Well, first of all, I think you should look at the Saudi interaction which the Honorable Prime Minister has had with His Royal Highness, the Crown Prince, as a continuity, as a continuum of the strategic partnership that we've had with them, which we established. Today, that strategic partnership was reviewed at the level of the Honorable Prime Minister and the Saudi Crown Prince, who is, by the way, in addition to the G20, which he attended, he's also on a state visit. So the day began with a ceremonial lineup at Rashtrapati Bhavan. It was followed by restricted talks between the Honorable Prime Minister and his closest advisors and the Saudi Crown Prince. Then delegation level talks in which, along with my two other colleagues, I was also involved. Then it was followed by a working lunch, etc. Now, what is the significance of Saudi Arabia-India friendship? It's one of the most important relationships we have. That is a given. That they're an important supplier of energy to India is also given. I don't remember the figures offhand. I think we have about $50 billion plus of trade, and out of which $35 billion is fossil fuel and gas and oil imports from Saudi Arabia. I think the joint declaration talks about them being one of the most trusted partners. That is a given. But I think, Navika ji, since you want to have a frank discussion, diplomacy is the stuff which ensures it's a process, it's events, it's process, forward planning. And that corridor between India, the countries of the Middle East, principally Saudi Arabia and the UAE, and on to Europe with the EU, Germany, France, supported by the United States, that is what I would submit to you is the shape of the future. Why do I call it the shape of the future? Simply, this is not about a snapshot picture of trade as it is. The trade as it is today is India consumes 5 million barrels of oil in a day. Maybe a little more, maybe slightly less sometime. That oil is supplied by Saudi Arabia, UAE, Iraq. That you need better logistics without? No.
Russia?
Russia also. That's geographically some distance. But when India, Middle East, Europe have institutionalized, integrated physical connectivity through better links between our ports, between railway lines. Frankly, if you ask me, there are very few countries in the world, I'm wanting to be modest, which have the capacity of building railway lines in other places. Because you have an experience of a domestic network, you've done it in other parts of the world, and you are in a position, I'm not talking about just rights in IRCON, etc., but you have the experience. So when this is taken up as a project, it's not merely an issue of what you and I trade in, how much I import from you or you import back from me. And that is also a wide context. But it's the benefit that you provide to third countries through that kind of connectivity. Would countries of the Middle East, otherwise Israel and all, be happy? I think they'll be very happy with this kind of a physical corridor. There is great potential waiting to be untapped. And how do I see that untapped? Is through this kind of connectivity. So I think the relationship with Saudi Arabia is one of the most important relationships on a standalone basis. Our energy partnership And the cooperation is again another layer. But I think this connectivity part, by the way, Saudi Arabia doesn't just sell stuff to us. They want to, and they collaborate in the establishment of refining capacity in petrochemicals, etc. All this is in the works and will gather momentum as we go forward.
So let me ask you, Mr. Hardeep Puri, there was a time when Russia was a no-go country for most of the West after the conflict between Russia and Ukraine. We managed to do energy business with Russia. Now we understand our imports from Russia slightly lower than what they were in 21 and 22, and we're back to the Middle East. Question is oil cheaper from Russia? Are we able to address the Asian premium on the Middle East oil?
First of all, since you wanted this to be a tough interview, let me be candid in response. The only duty a democratically elected government has in oil diplomacy, it's to its consumer. It's a moral duty. The democratically elected government has to ensure availability, has to ensure affordability, and it has to ensure sustainability so that we make that transition to green energy. In respect of all three, our relationships, whether with countries in the Gulf, the major suppliers there are UAE, Saudi Arabia, Iraq, Kuwait, whoever they are. The marketplace is a dynamic place. One day I may buy a little more from you, next day I may buy a little less, a little more from someone else. You talked about Russia. Can you imagine that when I was a young joint secretary on the Americas desk, I would never have imagined that we'll buy $20 billion of energy from the United States. What we buy from Saudi Arabia is also about $35 billion only. But US is going up. Saudi Arabia could go up. Why do we buy from one and not the other? At the end of the day, the only thing that is a determinant of where you will buy from is the price at which it is delivered to your port. And by virtue of the fact that there is geographical proximity with countries in the Gulf and nearby, freight and shipping costs being less, some of them give you discount, some of them don't. As a sovereign nation, I don't think any of us, certainly not the highest political leadership, will tell the others, please don't do this, please give us more discount. It's a function of the marketplace. And I think the price sensitivity of energy imports translates itself into volumes very quickly. That's been my experience, and I can share with you, Navika ji, February 2022, Ukraine. At that point of time, our imports of oil from Russia, or the Russian Federation, were only 0.2%, 0.2%, not even 1%. Why? Because transporting oil from, let's say, a geographically far off place, I'm not saying Russia, from any place, is just that much more expensive. All right, we have $16 billion, I think, worth of investments in Russia, Sakhalin. We produce oil there, I think 20% or something that. But it wasn't worth it transporting it from the Far East into India. We sell it there and sold on the international market and, goes to the consuming place. But when that situation changed and the West, particularly Europe, decided that they imposed, let's say, certain restrictions on energy exchanges with Russia, 2-3 things happened very quickly. Oil coming through the pipeline to Hungary was exempt. Oil going through the pipeline to China was exempt. Far East from Sakhalin to Japan was exempt. We found ourselves one of the few countries which had no exemption. But we had something which is much bigger than an exemption. We have a market. Please remember, and I'm going to use your hospitality to drive that point home, a large market like India, which consumes 5 million barrels a day, our ability to navigate in order to ensure availability and affordability has an impact on the producer also. So what we did was, when somebody decided to offer us a discount, we took the discount. When those discounts were healthy and competitively price to offset the freight disadvantage. We took advantage of it. When those discounts went less, discounts from another Middle East suppliers went up. Iraq is a case in point. Iraq became the largest supplier. Look, we are not in this business to tick off boxes. We are in this business, as the Honorable Prime Minister has made, we owe a duty to our consumer. India was one country in the world where petrol and diesel prices over the last 2 years, reference period, didn't go up. They went up 30-40% on an average elsewhere. India petrol prices came down 5%. Why? Because the Chief Executive, the Honorable Prime Minister, reduced excise duty twice. November 21, May 22. And the BJP states reduced the VAT. Today, noise comes from some of our friends.
Really?
Some of our friends.
Your friends?
West Bengal.
Really your friends?
Well, she was at the dinner. I was very
So
happy.
she's your friend and not part of the India Alliance?
No, I would say, when I use the friends, not an F full stop R full stop I, etc. Look, all I'm saying is, some of the non-BJP ruled states are selling petrol and diesel to their consumers 10, 11 rupees a litre higher, more expensive than BJP ruled state. So if there's any talk about reduction in prices, I'm not talking about the gas cylinder price on. They should be a little careful as to what is happening there.
So let me ask you, we are entering into political season, and however much you go blue in the face denying it, every time there's an election, there is a propensity to reduce either taxes or prices one way or another, and we are entering into political election season. One round of election of 5 states happening in November, December, that is, and one round of Lok Sabha elections. That is, of course, notwithstanding the special session of Parliament and all the speculation, ke jaldi ho jayenge election, this, that, and the other. All that is still in the air. Have you been able to negotiate even better deals with Saudi? With Saudi?
Look, first of all.
Because aapko ghatane to padenge na prices.
Insofar as elections are concerned,
आप कहते हो दूसरों को कि फ्रीबीज मत दो, पर आप भी तभी इलेक्शन के टाइम देते हो.
No, that's not correct. Insofar as elections are concerned, till you get one country, one poll, and I don't know when we will come to that position, we have a situation where you have elections every year. You are only talking about the 5 states which are elections are coming now. Why did you, madam, leave out the 2 states where we had them? Himachal and Karnataka. Agar wo election related reductions hai, then we should have had a reduction then. Let me tell you very simply, the explanation lies elsewhere. Government's capacity, any government, I'm not talking about any government's capacity to reduce prices or have the market reduce prices on fuel or energy is directly dependent on to what extent it is dependent on the global marketplace. If you have a 80-85% dependent on imports, for imports crude oil, then the world market price will dictate what it is.
But for a long time, when prices were low, and that's the criticism you've heard several times, for a long time when world prices were low, when your government came to power in 2014 onwards, you haven't really increased or rather decreased the prices at home because you've used the explanation that we are building infrastructure, this, that, and the other. But every election you do find some scope for a little bit of reduction, and that charge will remain against any government.
The precise period that you refer to, madam, and I'm talking, I think, about 2021 and 21-22, that precise period is the period when you were also supplying, and you continue to supply, 80 crore people free 3 meals of dry ration in a day, one. It's also the period when the world prices were shooting up, in our neighborhood 70-80%, 50-60%, US 35-40%, Canada 40%, Europe 28-30%, your prices came down by 5%. So to say that we have not passed on the benefit of the revenue earned is absurd, because you did. I'm giving you the example. Forget building roads, that's an entirely different area. Petrol 5% come hui hai, and diesel also 0.2% it has come down. Now, if your question is elections are coming, can I bring them down further? Be my guest, I'll answer it in a very candid way. If global situation, today prices are around $90 a barrel. We were able to do it when they were 75, 80. If they remain over $90 a barrel, I'll make two predictions to you. One is the fragile recovery at the global level, when large countries, including in East Asia, I use the word East Asia very carefully, not one country, two of the largest economies in East Asia, Europe, two or three of the large economies in the world, United States, when they are dealing with the problem of excess liquidity and inflation in the marketplace, if prices go way beyond $90, you will be doing the tipping point, you will be reaching the big R situation. Then prices will come down. Because demand will fall if there is very high prices on top of that. Who takes the decisions on this? India may have a voice, it has a strong voice, but ultimately if the producers cut production, my expectation, again, maybe that's the Punjabi optimist in me, I think people will see reason. If prices are tempered going forward the next 6 months, 2 quarters, 3 quarters, you can hope to have reasonable recoveries. If not, I'm afraid we will again be back into that spiral. You know, a few weeks ago, when you looked at the pink papers out of Europe, they would talk about recessionary conditions. What is a recessionary condition? Quarter on quarter, just bare growth quarter on quarter. And if it slips one day, then you are technically in a recession. I continue to be an optimist. Saudi Arabia, the countries of the Middle East, UAE, all of them will sell oil to India. The question is, they say they don't determine the price. They only determine the quantity that they release. If there are production cuts, well, if there are production cuts and demand falls, it's a different situation. But if there are production cuts and demand goes up, then even a $1 price can make a lot of difference in terms of what the cost to your exchequer is.
Absolutely. So let me ask you, when you talk about how the Western world is reacting, the declaration, consensus declaration, 100% consensus, no footnotes, all that is very good. But Ukraine's foreign ministry in its statement says that not naming Russia is a climb down by the Western world, and do we carry a cross in our heart for that?
Look, insofar as Ukraine, the situation that Ukraine finds itself in, I don't want to put myself in that position. Whenever you are negotiating a document of this kind, where it's not just whether you have a document which is approved, whether you have footnotes or you have interpretative notes, a lot rides on this. Navika ji, this is a deeply divided world, a deeply divided world. And if you can play as you did play, as you, Bharat, played unifier, it's a big achievement. Let me tell you, there is enough in that language which you and I can both agonize on and do some introspection on. If you have something about the rule of law, if you have something about the use of force, doesn't it have any meaning? After all, it's not one country which has used force. A lot of them have used force. I have a book on it. I know. And to say somewhere, and I'm talking about the intermediate, you know, to threaten in nuclear war is not acceptable or not admissible, etc. It has a meaning for many people. Who was the first to use nuclear weapons? I mean, I'm talking about the way the Second World War came to a conclusion. So I think I can fully understand why a particular country would have wanted more forthright to this thing. But the choice between forthright and, you know, sometimes if you strive for something really good and don't get an agreement, then you also have to ask yourself, what is the constraint there? Today, I was very, very much taken in. I'm not only been around long enough, I'm a professional student of diplomacy. I saw a statement from the Chinese expressing satisfaction. One end. I saw the Russians. I saw the Argentinian president give an interview. I saw the Brazilian president in a conversation. I saw the State Department. I had a long chat with the G20 Sherpa of the United States at the president's dinner. Look, if you follow these developments with a reasonable degree of interest and involvement, you'll say it was a difficult task. But I never had any doubts. not only because of what my conversations with the G20 Sherpa and his team was saying, but I knew at the end of the day, the Prime Minister has not only put his heart and soul into it, but the gravitas. When the Prime Minister of India, what is the operative part of those paras? The final one, I think 13. This is a time for peace.
This is not
war.
an era for war.
Not an era for war. Isn't that the first Prime Minister's statement originally? What has been the Indian diplomacy stand? Use the margin of persuasion that diplomacy provides. So I was very clear we would get it. In fact, I maybe shouldn't have. I had a slightly anxious young officer on my hands who's worked with me. And I said, how's it going? And he said, sir, we're very tenterhooks. I said, subah 3:30 baje tak ho jayega. 3:30, not that I had any information, but you know, all difficult documents which have substantive content. It's not, I can put in a fairy tale there and you put in your own fairy tale. This is going to be read, analyzed by students of international relations and practitioners and the chancelleries everywhere in the world. What did they say on gender? What did they say on terrorism? What did they say on terrorist financing? What did they say on climate finance? Multilateral. Every line is going to be analyzed. You can heave a sigh of relief, and Indian diplomacy can take a bow and express joy at the fact they've pulled it off. And believe me, and I don't say this because I'm a member of the Prime Minister's team, so you might say, you know, fulsome praise for the leader. No, I've been part of many governments, and, you know, I became a reasonably senior officer, secretary to government at a young age. This one was very special. The kind of personal monitoring and of detail that the big chief brought on this clearly showed, and that's why I had a level of confidence. I told you also in it that this is going to happen.
Mr. Hardeep Puri, what would you say about Mr. Rahul Gandhi, who's abroad at this moment, and who said that China is a country with a vision? He's also said many other things, and he's Priyanka Gandhi Vadra has said Inka G20. How do you respond to some of these statements?
I am genuinely, look, I have worked as a young officer, and when this young leader's father was the Prime Minister, Sri Lanka, elsewhere. I'm getting worried now. I think there is an inherent inability to realize that if you fall into a trap, it's a deep trap. That statement you're referring to about Brussels, about China's vision, he was actually extolling the virtues of the Belt and Road Initiative. Navika, I think one of his advisors forgot to tell him that that Belt and Road Initiative has turned out to be a debt trap. Now, whether you are talking about advanced economies in Europe, whether you're talking about them or you're talking about developing countries in Asia, Hambantota Port, so many white elephant projects, railway lines in Southeast Asia. I don't want to go into that. He should realize that when countries can't pay back their debt, they are giving away their territory. So I think this fact was either glossed over, or maybe what we've seen doesn't report that. But certainly the way it came out meant that he had no understanding of what the BLR initiative is.
And that we had an...
No, I'm coming. So he said something, but you know, unless we develop a vision of our own, I mean, he's making the statement one day before the G20 is adopting this...
economic corridor.
It is economic corridor which brings together
Asia, Middle East, and Europe.
Middle East, Europe, backed by the United States. So even that was factually so way off the mark. It is possible he could say that when I made the statement, I did not know about it. But more than that, where I think they should really get worried is that there are congressmen and congressmen. I found it so heartwarming that the former Prime Minister, Dr. Manmohan Singh, made a statement
lauding India's
contribution, that, you know, positive. That's what statesmanship is all about. My friend Shashi Tharoor, he doesn't like to be referred to as my student. I think some good must have come off it.
You taught him?
At St. Stephen's College. I say, no, Shashi, you have problems with saying I'm your teacher. At least say that you were a student in my class and I was the teacher. But so, put that aside.
And how's your student faring these days?
No, he's doing very well. He has lauded the G20. So that's why I was celebrating that. I mean, he's tried to, in the end,
Are you trying to get him out of his party?
No. Somebody asked him, a common friend of ours who was in Hindu college sent him his message. And I think his message back, I can't repeat it all. He said, I might get into trouble on this. No, but look at the fact that it was a spontaneous welcoming of India's diplomacy. He doesn't want to give political credits to the Prime Minister, I can understand, but even he realizes. He tweeted somewhere, we are very lucky or something to the fact that in 1987, this is to Amitabh, that you joined the IAS, the Foreign Service lost an ace negotiation. Put that aside. Put that aside. The fact is, Shashi Tharoor joined Dr. Manmohan Singh and others in lauding that achievement. Now,
so would you say बाकियों को समझ नहीं आई, or would you say that compliments across the aisle are not something that are very much in vogue these days?
Navika, you can put whatever interpretation you like on it. I put it differently. When the chorus and the celebratory mood is such, sometimes you want to be honest with yourself also. Shashi put in a thing that they are instrumentalizing this politically, domestically. I don't want to say anything. I was asked this question.
Why?
Why? Because
was your Punjabi coming out?
Yeah, Punjabi coming out because he said कि इसमें चुनाव के लिए आप यूज करेंगे. अरे भाई मैं शुरू से कह रहा हूँ जो चुनाव जीत सकते हैं वो G20 सम्मेलन, शिखर सम्मेलन भी शानदार तरीके से ऑर्गेनाइज कर सकते हैं. आप जो है आप जब भी कुछ इंपॉर्टेंट इवेंट होता है आप चले जाते हो. देखो ये जो क्रिटिसिज्म की दिस ट्रेन, इट्स आई डोंट नो हाउ टू पुट इट. कर्तव्य पथ बना था, ग्रीनरी हटा देंगे, जामुन के पेड़ उखाड़ के ले जाएंगे और पानी भर गया, सारा डिस्ट्रॉय हो गया ग्रीन. अरे कल somebody tweeted पानी भर गया इसमें. अरे देखो, अरे भाई कहीं भी बारिश होगी, till a few minutes later when the drainage system and pumps start working, you feel in those 5 minutes you take the photograph, you take the photograph. What are we discussing? And would you want to be happy with that? आपने भी किया था भाई 83 में, आपने भी किया था. जयराम was trying to say कि हमने भी किया था 83 में. अरे देख तो लो तुमने कौन से स्केल पे किया था और ये कौन से स्केल में हो रहा है. ये 60 शहरों में 200 से अधिक इवेंट्स हुए हैं. कल्चरल एक्सट्रावेगेंजा, हॉस्पिटैलिटी, the tribute to Bapuji at this thing. So this is India's moment. And what is the moment? The Prime Minister has utilized the G20 presidency to outline a vision successfully adopted of a human-centric development approach post-COVID for a new international order with India at the center. Is this a moment of happiness for all Indians? So what are these guys cribbing about?
But when you talk about Jairam Ramesh, let me read out another point that he puts out. And he talks about the statement made by US President Joe Biden in Vietnam, where the US President is stating, as I always do, I raise the importance of respecting human rights and the vital role of civil society and a free press in building a strong and prosperous country with Prime Minister Modi. This statement was not made in India, and Jairam Ramesh says Modi told Biden, na press conference karunga, na karne dunga.
Yeah, first of all, what did President Biden hear from Mr. Modi? What did Mr. Modi say? These are all Jairam's extrapolations on it. Human rights has been a central plank of the US policy all over the world at any given point of time. Human rights is also our plank, etc. But when Jairam hears two disjointed words somewhere else, he's saying, he saw the body language between President Biden and Prime Minister Modi. From, he got after a 15 hour flight, went straight into a working day. Navika, I know you're very young still, but after a 15-hour flight, do a bilateral. The next morning you are at the venue. You are having a full day there. And then after that you reach Rajpath in the morning, or Rajghat in the morning, and you look at the body language. So, ये क्या Jairam को बोलो ढूंढो कहीं इधर-उधर और भी दो चार शब्द मिल जाएंगे. And then he said it there. मैं ना बोलूँगा ना बोलने दूँगा. मैं जयराम को अभी shouldn't start उसको याद कराने ये क्या बोलता है और क्या करता है. छोड़ दो उसको.
Let me also ask you about the dinner diplomacy. not calling Mallikarjun Kharge but having chief ministers, Ashok Gehlot, Bhupesh Baghel don't turn up, Mr. Sukhu from Himachal Pradesh of the Congress party turns up, Nitish Kumar, and there are pictures that have come out, Nitish Kumar and the Prime Minister having a candid chat, hand on shoulder, the body language and all that. What's the story? What's the story that you're trying to...
I was at the dinner and I found it a very, very educative experience. And
in diplomacy or in politics?
Diplomacy, politics, etc. Let me give you one or two examples. I saw President Biden speaking to the Honorable Chief Minister of Tamil Nadu. So somebody quipped, here is President Biden meeting Stalin. Okay, just that statement itself. Okay, who was the last U.S. president who met Stalin?
The irony is not missed on anybody.
Just a second. I saw Prime Minister's photograph. I was there, arms around the Chief Minister, Honorable Chief Minister of Haryana. I mean, it was not a patronizing. It was a genuine, gesture between two political
Haryana,
figures.
Bihar?
No, about Himachal Pradesh. Himachal Pradesh. I was in a lift with Nitish ji. I've had the privilege of knowing him for a long time. I saw Jharkhand Chief Minister. I'm naming the opposition states, okay? Jharkhand, Bihar. I saw Mamta ji sitting on the table with the Honorable Home Minister. I can go on recounting. Now, in all this, if the question is Congress Chief Ministers, yes, Congress Chief Ministers were there. Today I saw a slightly strange statement from Adhir Ranjan Chaudhary
to Mamta.
Why was she there at the dinner? Are yaar, she was invited by the Honorable Prime Minister in a G20 moment. She decided to come. What is your issue there? Insofar as invitations are concerned, you mentioned one gentleman called Mr. Mallikarjun Kharge. You remember that we celebrated 15th August a few days ago? Right on the ramparts of the Upper Red Fort pe, there was a chair which had everybody's name in it. For a long time, the press had a field day focusing on that empty chair. So I was asked by a press conference, "Bhai, wo Kharge ji nahi aaye Red Fort pe?" To which my answer was, "Unhone kaha unki kahin aankh mein koi takleef thi." I said, "I'd send him my eye doctor or whatever the issue." Then it turned out he went to a parivar function, unke parivar ka function somewhere. Look, it's your job to invite. But if the question is, we should have invited Kharge, so only he had the satisfaction of saying no, then I don't think that's very intelligent. You invited the chief ministers, constitutional position holders. And this man is leader of the largest opposition party, but he's not, And listen to me, let's see. When you set up a panel for one country, one poll, one guy says, usko nahi bulaya, mujhe nahi bulaya, usko bulaya. Yeah, this is childish. I think two things stand out in the last few days. Chief ministers of opposition ruled states, including Bihar, West Bengal, Tamil Nadu. We're going quite far, huh? In terms of geography and political depth. They chose to attend. And some people, including my friend from Delhi, I was supposed to be sitting next to him to get a replay of what happened.
Arvind Kejriwal?
He didn't come.
He didn't come?
Must have been very busy sorting out the seat adjustment with the Congress in Punjab and Delhi.
Which is not happening.
I think so, it's not happening. I told him that even at the Red Fort, it ain't going to happen.
So the question here is, when they come, India is breaking up, you have a field day. When they don't come, you have a field day saying इनमें grace ही नहीं है, आते ही नहीं है देश के function के लिए. तो
you are saying we are having a field day all the time. We are on the moon. We are all over the moon. Look, the fact of the matter is today, and as you indulge me, 9 years of solid progress of the Modi government. Number one. Number two, moon landing. Number three, highly successful G20. Okay. Bharat Mandapam.
Number four, a parliament special session coming up, of which nobody has an idea what it's all about. Number five, elections coming in. Number six, speculation over early elections. Number seven, one country, one election.
One side in a political discourse is setting the agenda, led by the Honorable Prime Minister. There's a convention that when parliament sessions take place, there's no system that पहले इसमें क्या होगा, अरे business होगी, legislative business होगी, क्या legislative business होगी, अगर 18 तारीख को सेशन है 2-3 दिन पहले बताते हैं, इस बारी भी बता देंगे, so anxiety क्या है?
पर इनका कहना है कि special sessions जब भी बुलाए गए हैं, either they are commemoration sessions or the agenda is told upfront.
You could also have a combination of both. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not the parliamentary affairs minister, but the point here is there is a feel good, there is a feeling of, with due humility, of having got a job well done, 9 years, moon landing, the other mission, which is now I think running into a satisfactory listing, Aditya, Bharat Mandapam, Parliament, other things will happen. But this is a country where, and by the way, a rate of growth in the last quarter of what, 7.8%. Okay, so if people are turning around and wishing to engage you, shouldn't these guys feel happy about it instead of going around desperately looking for that odd piece of something which they can point to as not having gone right, or something which is they need to correct?
They also say you're getting into the India shining mode, and India shining mode for the BJP is almost like deja vu of 2004, when you had everything going during the Vajpayee government and finally you didn't quite make it in the election.
You know what happened in the India shining mode? The election was along with a weekend and the guys who were shining went off on a holiday. Well, no two situations are comparable. Today, on 15th August, the Honorable Prime Minister said कि 2 crore हमारी दीदी लाखपति बन जाएगी. He's got a new scheme, Vishwakarma, which will be unveiled on the 17th of this month. Because those of our, see, you're doing skill training, etc. Those of our brothers and sisters who are in professions like Tarkhan, plumber, etc., unke liye, to do something to support them. And I can start counting other things also. That Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana mein, in the rural and urban मिला के 4 crore आपने आवास sanction किए, but there may be still some people who, are newly into the job market, who have to go and get a loan. So some form of interest subvention, we are working out the details on that also. We're doing so many things together. This is not a India shining moment. This is a process which is focused on those. Swanidhi scheme. This is India shining.
Are you doing more for the downtrodden, the lower end of the spectrum as far as income groups are concerned?
Absolutely. This is it. Swanidhi scheme is precisely.
But opposition is not convinced.
No,
Mr. Chidambaram's statement, or even pick up Abhishek Banerjee, who says कि जिस दिन इंडिया की कोऑर्डिनेशन मीटिंग है उसी दिन ईडी उनको बुला लेती है.
ये देखिए ईडी और इलेक्शन कमीशन में कोई सजेस्ट करे कि इनमें कोई वो डायरेक्ट लाइन है, आई वुड फाइंड दैट वेरी डिफिकल्ट. बट चिदम्बरम जी का बताता हूँ. I tweeted it also and I find it hilarious. A few years ago he said, how are you having this digital infrastructure? ना उस पर बिजली है, ना उस पर कनेक्ट कर पाता. अरे जब वो बात कर रहे थे तो कितने हो गए थे? 10 बिलियन डिजिटल पेमेंट्स वो उस अगस्त के महीने की बात है. तो मैंने ट्वीट किया, चिदम्बरम जी तो कई चीजें ऐसी भूल जाते हैं. ऐसा है कि वो आजकल पार्ट टाइम पॉलिटिशियन है और ज्यादातर वो वकालत में बिजी है. सो I think he's actually lost some of the thing. Otherwise, you wouldn't come out with करनी भी the statement 15 दिन पहले करनी थी. On the day before or 2 days before that 10 billion figure came for August, he made the statement like the young leader made it about extolling the virtues of that Belt and Road Initiative and there should be an alternative. 2 दिन बाद यहाँ पे वो alternative हो गया. पूछा ये जाना चाहिए जब आपके पास responsibility थी सरकार चलाने की. Most of the 7 decades they have been there ना. Most part of this 70 years period, what did they do? गरीबी तब कहाँ थी, अभी कहाँ है? What is the situation now? The most vulnerable sections that you're talking about, the street vendors. This was a scheme for financial inclusion, right, which has made the most marginalized sections of our society जो रोज कर्जा लेके रेड़ी पटरी पे अपना व्यापार करते हैं, made them into micro entrepreneurs. 10,000 का लोन वापस दो विदाउट इंटरेस्ट, टाइम से 20 का मिलेगा, 20 का वापस दो 50 का मिलेगा, 80,000 and upload their data, make them beneficiaries of the different scheme. So this is what you are doing for those marginalized.
The Congress party says the only achievement you and your government have is renaming Bharat from India.
मेरे को इसमें क्यों हमें क्रेडिट देते हैं? संविधान का पहला पेज खोल लें, वहां पे लिखा इंडिया, that is Bharat. Why are they even bothered? Why are they giving us credit for it? They should have taken the credit for it. Because ultimately 1947 में or 1950 में, when all this went, and since then most of the time they've been in power. First line, India, that is Bharat.
What would you say to the opposition today?
I would say have your meetings wherever your next one is. वो 3 महीने तो लगा दिया, as Mr. Prashant Kaur said in that famous interview. Do you 3 महीने मिले, 5 दिन सिर्फ बात की? देखो कोशिश करो, शायद आपकी कहीं मार्जिन में दाल भी गल जाए, but I think 2024 is a
done deal.
I never say done deal because in politics, but I think we've got the right ingredients. You've got a very, very hands-on Prime Minister and a party which is focused on all those who have been at a disadvantage, the OBC, the dispossessed, the underprivileged. 2 crore दीदी को लखपति बनाना या बाकियों को.
At the national level, you may have all. At the state level, are you becoming a little vulnerable, losing several states in the recent past?
Hold on. 2016 also, when I was writing my second book, the Congress had done very well in 2 states, I think Rajasthan and Madhya Pradesh. And the publisher said, sir, you want to revisit? I said, I'll write an extended introduction. Look, today you have a mature electorate. And whilst the Congress has reason to be happy about what happened in Himachal and Karnataka, our vote share didn't go down. We may have made mistakes, and we are ready to introspect and correct those mistakes. But if you're worried about the state government election, I think the state government elections are such. There also, the BJP will do very well. And in the national elections, there's no issue. I've already made some predictions to you.
Well, on that note, Mr. Hardeep Puri, thank you very much for speaking to me. And we'll continue to meet because this is, as I said, political season, which is just beginning.
I look forward to that. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.